Welcome to another episode of Science Made Simple. I'm Miss Devina and I'm a secondary science specialist here at the Pique Lab. In this video, I'll be analysing a past year exam question. I've also prepared this question for you to download for free by clicking a link in the description box below. So let's get started. Let's take a look at this question and do it together. Over here, it says that Kelly performed an experiment as shown in the diagram below. If you take a look at the diagram below, some of you will have no idea what this experiment is testing. But in order to understand what this experiment is testing, we have to look at what is being changed as we move from setup to setup. In this experiment, we can clearly see that there are 3 different setups. Now, can you tell me what is the difference between setup 1, 2, and 3? The difference between each of this setup is the size of the beaker. Now I want you to focus on setup 1. So what is happening in setup 1? We see that Kelly, she placed the beaker over a lit candle. And after a period of time, we see that the candle no longer has a flame. What do you think happened to the flame of the candle? Let me give you a clue. Take a look at what is in the beaker at the start of the experiment. At the start, we see that there is a candle and there is a flame. But is that all that is inside this beaker? What about this empty space over here? We must know that there is air that is occupying this space. Or more specifically, we are focusing on the oxygen that is present in this air. So why is oxygen so important for this flame? Well, think about it this way. Just like how us humans, we require oxygen in order to survive, this flame requires oxygen in order for it to stay lit. What happens after a period of time? We see that there is no longer a flame, correct? So what does this tell you about the amount of oxygen in the beaker at the end? There is no more oxygen. Hence, there is also no more flame. I want you to now focus on setup 2. In setup 2, we see that Kelly used the even bigger beaker. And if the beaker is bigger, what does this tell you about the amount of oxygen within the beaker? We also have more oxygen. Similarly, if you take a look at setup number 3, we have an even bigger beaker. This means that we have even more oxygen. If I have more oxygen, would my flame be able to stay lit longer or shorter? My flame would be able to survive for longer. And this is what we see over here. As the beaker gets bigger and bigger, the time taken for the flame to go out gets longer and longer. Now let's take a look at what the question wants us to find. Which hypothesis could Kelly be testing? Do you remember what a hypothesis is? A hypothesis is a calculated guess. And more importantly, within this hypothesis, we must have our 2 key variables. The first is our independent variable, and the second, our dependent variable. The independent variable is the variable that we change. And in this case, Kelly changed the size of her beaker. But what about the dependent variable? It is the variable that is measured. And in this experiment, she measured the time taken for the flame to go out. Besides these variables, our hypothesis must also have comparative words. Comparative words include words such as more or less, longer and shorter, as well as bigger and smaller. Now, with all of this in mind, let's take a look at all our options and decide which is the correct hypothesis that Kelly could be testing. Option 1 says, more oxygen leads to a candle burning longer. Let's identify the independent and dependent variables. Over here, we see that the amount of oxygen is our independent variable. In this experiment, what did Kelly change? She changed the size of her beaker. And when she uses a bigger beaker, the amount of oxygen increases. So this means that the independent variable could also be the amount of oxygen. Now what about the dependent variable? The dependent variable is how long the flame took to burn. Besides this, does this statement have any comparative words? Yes, it does. We have words such as more and longer. And because this statement has both our independent and dependent variable, as well as our comparative words, option 1 is the correct answer. Let's see why options 2 to 4 is not correct. If you take a look at option 2, the bigger the candle, the longer it burns. In this entire experiment, did Kelly ever change the size of a candle? Throughout all the different setups, the size of the candle remained the same. So over here, option 2 is not the correct hypothesis. Now what about option 3? A candle stops burning when all the oxygen has been used up. Doesn't this sound more like a statement? And in this statement, is there any comparative words? No, there are no comparative words. So statement 3 is not a hypothesis. What about our last option, option 4? The bigger the beaker, the hotter the temperature of the flame. The size of the beaker is our independent variable. The dependent variable here is the temperature of the flame. But again, in this entire experiment, she never measured the temperature of the flame. So this is not the dependent variable in our experiment. So based on 1, 2, 3, 4, we see that option 1 is the hypothesis that Kelly could be testing. So the correct answer is option 1. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Found this video useful? Give us a thumbs up and check out more by clicking the links here. You can also subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos. Until next time, stay curious inside and limitless outside. Bye!